Okay. So if you forget what's the rakat third or fourth, so you try to wait for a second and think what that is, right? And if you're still in doubt, what you do is you consider that depending on where you are, you finish that rakat. Like for example, you were forgetting in ruku, right? So you'll finish your ruku, you do the first sajda and the second sajda, and you're still doubtful, you'll sit down and you'll do tashahhud and salam, considering that, okay, I'm going to finish the namaz, and you won't do any action which is going to invalidate the salat itself. Then you'll stand up and do one more rakat. And then again, and in that rakat, you're only going to reading Surah Al-Hamd, that's it. And then you're going to do ruku and sujood, and then tashahhud and salam again, and that's it. Yes, go ahead. Why do we only pray 17 rakat in total? Oh, that's like istihbab, some of them. The obligatory rakats are, Fajr have 2 obligation, Maghrib has 3, Isha has 4, Zuhr and Asr both have 4 and 4. So that's 17, right? That's mustahab, that's recommended. So how it says, how we say obligation and then recommendation. So obligation means wujub, that it has to be done. Recommendation, that it's a recommendation, do it or not, right? Sunnahs also are recommended ones. Thank you. Jazakumullah khairan. Usually what we call sunnah. So sunnah can be of 2 types, right? The obligatory sunnah and the mustahab ones. Like for example, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to do the wajib, fajr, maghrib, isha, zuhr and asr, right? So that's a sunnah but also an obligation. But in the terminological world, we don't call it sunnah. Sunnah are referred to those salat which are more of like recommended ones. Okay. So in regard to that, if there's anything else you guys want to talk about, we can talk about it as well, inshallah. Say another loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil faraja. Yeah, you can go ahead, yeah. Okay, I thought. Yeah. Like the Salat al-Ghafil. Okay. So, Maghrib has how every Salat around it we have some of the recommended Salats, right? So, for example, Fajr has 2 recommended, 2 rakat recommended Salat, which has to be done before Fajr, right? For Zuhr and Asr, Zuhr has 8 rakat, 2 and 2 and 2 and 2, and Asr also have 8. So, those are also supposed to be done before Zuhr and before Asr. With Maghrib has a 4 rakat, 2 sets of 2, mustahab namaz. Ghufala is the namaz which is recommended to be read between Maghrib and Isha. It is extremely recommended to an extent that it has been said that one of the Imams, alayhim salam, Imam Zain al-Abidin, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad al-Farajahum, when he interacted with one of the killers from Karbala, one of the people who was part of that enemy side, said if that person ends up doing Salat al-Ghufala, and in the Salat al-Ghufala he prays for forgiveness, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will still forgive him. But then later he said, because of what he did, he's never going to get a tawfiq of reading Salat al-Ghufala. But that's how powerful Salat al-Ghufala is. So in the first rakat you read the part of the verse where it says Bismillah wa dhannuna idha mughadiban, and then La ilaha illa anta subhanaka inni kuntu minaz zalimin, and then the other rakat you read wa indahum fal ghaib, and then you go to qunut and you say Allahumma inni as'aluka min fal ghaib allati, and then you make dua, whatever dua you want to make. And that's the time for acceptance of dua. And you say Allahumma anta wali wa ni'mati, and then you ask Allah, and then you make another dua. So what the scholars have said, that because you have 4 total number of rakats as a recommended salat after mustahab and nafal or sunnah after Maghrib. So what you can do is you can replace the ghufala is so important that you can replace the 2 rakat with the ghufala. So you can do a 2 rakat mustahab namaz and then a 2 rakat ghufala. That's it. Your Maghrib nafal is complete. And then Isha has 1 rakat. So if you want to do it while sitting down, you do it like in a 2 rakat. But if you stand up and do it, it's just 1 rakat. So I hope your question was answered, inshallah. Can we have a loud salawat? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa farajah. Yes, I'll get his question and then come back to you. Yes, go ahead. In Laylatul Qadr, awesome. So Laylatul Qadr have, mashallah, a lot of recommended, du'as, like Josh al-Kabir, and then you can read Dua Kumail as well, then you can read Jami' Kabira, Ziyarat Jami' Kabira. And I'm glad you're thinking about it from right now, because Laylatul Qadr is supposed to be, thought of from the very first day when the Laylatul Qadr is over. Start preparing for it throughout the year. If that can be done in Rajab, that can be done in Sha'ban, if that can be done in Ramadan. So I'm glad you're thinking about it. So, because it's a night better than 1,000 months. So yeah, there are a lot of du'as recommended to be read, and one of them, some of them I mentioned to you, inshallah. Please go ahead, brother. SubhanAllah. So you're saying that some of the scholars, can they be awliya? First, let's say what wali Allah means, right? Wilayat has levels, right? For example, very easy to understand. A father has wilayat on a child, right? Very talk about the child is not baligh, haven't reached that specific age of puberty as per Islam, the balugha. The decisions of the child are with father. For example, the child owns, like, for example, $1 million as well, right? The child has no right to spend it. With the consent of the father would see, okay, it is in the favor of the child, then it can be spent, right? So at that time, your wali is the father. And why his wali? Allah has given him that wilayah. For example, in the case of the sisters, like, the father has a wilayah that they cannot marry anybody without the consent of the father. So he's wali in that purpose. The boys, they don't have that. When they become baligh, then they're out. But with the sisters, as per Ihtiyat wajib, as per most scholars, the father should have the wilayat. Neither can a father make them marry somebody, because they still need the daughter's consent, and neither can daughters. Specifically if the father is part of the life and everything and always there and doing everything, right? There's some people who just let go of the children, and then that's a different case and have different rulings. So wilayat has levels, right? So the wilayat Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam have, obviously that's, nobody can get near that. Those are Allah's divine, people who Allah has made them, for example, either the prophets or the imams. But in a lower level of their wilayat, depending on how a person is growing, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them more wilayat, like depending on who you are. So, for example, a mushtahid, a marja, a hakim al-shar'i also have a sort of wilayat, when it comes to your affairs. And then it goes on, right? So some of the scholars, when they live this life in the best way, and they're somebody who are near Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they're seeing Allah's nearness, then Allah give them their wilayah. And we have in our hadith which talks about, even believers, they would have the right to, some of them have the right to, do shafa'at. Then the shuhada, people who sacrifice their lives in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they can do shafa'at. And then definitely some of the scholars, and the hadith goes like this, midadul ulama afdal dima ash-shuhada. The pen of a scholar is better than, more preferred than the blood of some of the martyrs. Why? Because that pen can lead to their martyrdom. How do you get to know the significance of martyrdom, right? Some of the scholars, they've worked on that and they portray to you, how that is, right? So yes, definitely, for sure, some of the scholars would reach that state where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them the shifa'ah, and they can inshallah do shifa'at. And we do have narrations about that as well. I don't have any in the top of mind, but it's recommended. Yes, go ahead. Say it again, sorry? Okay, Rabb is a term which is in nowadays, we have, when it comes to the languages, when it comes to the philosophy of languages, it keeps changes in times. We have a dictionary meaning of a word, and that word goes into a what you call terminological meaning. For example, if I tell you I have a laptop, right? You will laugh if I say I have a laptop right now, but this is a laptop. But usually you have so used to the terminology laptop as an electronic device, which is a computer in a specific way, then whenever I say laptop, you only think of that. But that word laptop has a meaning, a thing on the top of the lap, but has gone into terminology, right? Right. So just to understand this way, certain words go in a very specific way. For example, salat. The meaning of salat is like a dua. When I say I'm going to go do salat, everybody knows that I'm referring to a very specific ritual act of prayer. I'm going to do like a specific ritual act which is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So Rabb in these days, even though the literal meaning of Rabb is the provider, the nurturer, and very famous story about the grandfather Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, where Hazrat Abdul Muttalib alayhi salam, and he went to Ibraha, right? That person who was planning to attack Kaaba, and he's like, hey, give me back my camels. And he's like stunned. He's like, you just are concerned about your camels. You're not worried about Kaaba and people around and everything. He's like, Ana Rabbul Ibil. I am the nurturer of those ibils, those camels. That Kaaba also have a Rabb, and he's going to take care of that. So in those days, that Rabb word was used for nurture anybody. For example, Arbab is a term which is used today as well in, like, for example, in the Arab world. Arbab, somebody who is responsible for their affairs. But in our culture, where we live in, we do live in, right? Rabb is just used for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So now if somebody tried to bring Rabb for somebody else, it's just they're a bit, insensitive to the understanding that we don't use, because we don't speak Arabic as our first language. And the Rabb in our culture and language is only used to refer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if now you bring Rabb for somebody, you're playing along the words, right? It's a zu ma'ani, there's multiple meanings in it, right? And that's not smart to be done. So you don't want to call anybody else Rabb, right? But if somebody specifically say, I'm just referring to a literal meaning of the Rabb, okay, that's fine. But that's not the case. When somebody want to call Rabb, they want to say, that's the one who provides and everything. But if they specify, no, if this person is providing with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, have anybody said Hazrat Mikail Islam Rabb? But we all know that he's the one who arranges the nutrition and everything, and he's the angel specified for sustenance and all that. Nobody calls him Rabb, right? Except when play around, sometimes you want to use the word Rabb, even though he's just somebody who is said by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do that. So if you're calling awliya Allah, one of those people who are from Allah, and they want to with Allah's help gonna give you something, you don't want to call them Rabb. I hope that answers the question. Yes, go ahead. The 5 most important books in what regard? Allah's most important book is Quran. Are you talking about in the Shia Islamic world, what are the most important books? Some of them are like, for example, our hadith book, like Usul Kafi, Man Lahis al-Faqih. Oh, are you referring to those? Okay, all right, Ahsan. So I couldn't understand your question. So for us, we are told that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed so many of the books and suhuf and booklets when it comes to Islamic and stuff like that. But some of them were like proper legit books which were revealed on some of the big prophets, right? And they had a whole code of conduct and everything. Like in our time, we have Quran. We know that it is accurate and there's nothing wrong with it, and Allah has promised to take care of it. But then we have Torah, then we have Injil, then we have Zabur. So these are some of the books which are known in Islam as the most important ones. Yes. Yes, go ahead.
Is it a sin to purposely skip the masjid? Like you're able to know all that kind of stuff, like you just sign out that it's like
Can you please repeat the first part?
Is it a sin to purposely skip the masjid?
Oh, that's a very good question. Purposely missing on masjid? Oh, that's a very, very good question. So, masjid offers Salatul Jamaat, right? So let's talk in that context, right? If a person says that I'm not going to do Salat with Jamaat because Jamaat has no value, yes, that's problematic. But if you say, because I'm lazy, I don't want to do it, I am somebody who's don't want to do it, that's fine. But if somebody misses Jamaat thinking that, it's nothing, that's problematic. That has an issue, realistically issue. So that's something I can tell you from the ruling perspective right now. But masjid being associated with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His worship and everything, And people who actually live nearby have more right to come to the masajid and make sure that they always have attendance, and it just shows that how much value of society is giving, a nation is giving to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if the masjid is full, then you say, oh, these people are focusing on that, right? So did you get your question answered? So I'll look more into this and see if the masjid itself. But yeah, from the perspective of the salat itself, if somebody say, oh, Jamaat has no value and I skip it, then yes, it's problematic. Yes. If you're giving us aftar, what? No, it's not a sin. No, it's not a sin. It's not a sin. Yes, you can do as well, but then you're going to miss on the Jamaat and everything. Usually we do prayer first, right? But this is not a sin. But when a believer is inviting you, it's great to accept their da'wah, It's great to accept their invitation. Yes. Yeah. No, it's not. I'm not saying it's a sin, but you're missing out on like I said, considering Jamaat as less value, that's problematic. For example, somebody says hijab is not part of Islam. A person who does not do hijab, okay, they say, okay, I am the one not ready to do it. That's a sin itself, but they're still part of the Islamic believers. But somebody says hijab is not part of Islam, that's problematic. Jamaat in Yo Ali. So Jamaat itself is recommended act. It's not an obligation. But if somebody says because it has no value, that's why I don't want to do it, I just do my own, that's problematic. But not coming to masjid, it's not haram. But you're missing out. You're not able to see the believers. You're missing out on connecting with the scholars. You're missing out on connecting with the words of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So even if it's not a sin, but you're missing out on a lot of good stuff from that perspective. Yeah. So whenever there's an order in Quran, right? So it also goes back to the philosophy of the words, right, and the languages. So that's where the Islam and the ahkam and the scholars and the word of Ahlul Bayt alayhis salam, they comes into play. How would you know certain thing when it says do it is an obligation or a recommended act, or don't do it is a haram or forbidden? So yes, that's something which you need to establish, right? But for example, depending on what that thing is, for example, certain things are wajib kafai. Doing ghusl and kafai is wajib kafai. One person does it, it goes away from the other people, right? But there's no such thing as an obligation itself. It could become wajib kafai in the secondary ruling, right? That you establish a masjid and start going there. But itself, as the first ruling, it's not an obligation to go there. But it's not something which, on the other side, we know that it's recommended to go and do these things. Yeah? But from the perspective is sinning, it's not a sin. Right. So I think, inshallah, if there's one, I can take one last question, then we can inshallah start with the dua, inshallah. But Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farad. Yes, go ahead. Okay, so if you mistakenly or knowingly did a ghaibat of somebody, right? First of all, we should know that that's something haram and shouldn't be done, it's forbidden. Number two is that if you know that I can go to that person and seek forgiveness directly from them and say, I made a mistake, can you please forgive me? And you know that it will go well and it will give a positive outcome, then you should be doing that. But if you know that by doing this, things are going to get messed up and fasad is going to come into play and corruption, then you don't do that. You do astaghfar. Every time you remember them, you have to do astaghfar for them. Every single time you remember that person, you have to do astaghfar for them. That's, if you want to do it, okay, great. But what has been told is that you have to do astaghfar for the people. God forbid you do do ghibat of, and every time you remember them, you have to do astaghfar for them. So inshallah, I hope inshallah we will be able to continue with this session tomorrow. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from you all. But Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Inshallah we'll be reading dua iftitah together. بمحمد وآل محمد صلوات الله ما صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أفتتح الثناء بحمدك وأنت مسدد للثواب بمنك، وأيقنت أنك أنت أرحم الراحمين في موضع العفو والرحمة، وأشد المعاقبين في موضع النقال والنقمة، وأعظم المتجبرين في موضع الكبرياء والعظمة. اللهم أذنت لي في دعائك ومسألتك، فاسمع يا سميع مدحتي، وأجب يا رحيم دعوتي، وقل يا غفور عثرتي. فكم يا إلهي من كربة قد فرجتها، وهموم قد كشفتها، وأسرة قد أقلتها، ورحمة قد نشرتها، وحلقة بلاء قد فككتها. الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا، ولم يكن له شريك في الملك، ولم يكن له ولي من الذل، وكبره تكبيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الحمد لله بجميع محامده كلها، على جميع نعمه كلها. الحمد لله الذي لا مضاد له في ملكه ولا منازع له في أمره. الحمد لله الذي لا شريك له في خلقه ولا شبيه له في عظمته. الحمد لله الفاشي في الخلق أمره، وحمده الظاهر بالقرم مجده، الباسط بالجود يده، الذي لا تنقص خزائنه ولا تزيده قسرة العطاء إلا جودا وكرما. إنه هو العزيز الوهاب. اللهم إني أسألك قليلا من كثير، مع حاجة بي إليه عظيما، وغناك عنه قديم، وهو عندي كثير، وهو عليك سهل يسير. اللهم إن عفوك عن ذنبي، وتجاوزك عن خطيئتي، وصفحك عن ظلمي، وسترك عن قبيح عملي، وحلمك عن كثير جرمي عندما كان من خطاي وعمدي. أتماني في أن أسألك ما لا أستوجبه منك، الذي رزقتني من رحمتك، ورأيتني من قدرتك، وعرفتني من إجابتك، فصرت عدوك آمنا، وأسألك مستأنسا لا خائفا ولا وجلا، مدلا عليك فيما كسدت فيه إليك. فإن أبتع عني أتبت بجحلي عليك، ولعل الذي أبت عني هو خير لي لعلمك بعاقبة الأمور. فلم أرى مولا كريما أصبر على عبد اللعيم منك علي يا ربي. إنك تدعوني فأولي عنك، وتتحبب إلي فأتبغض إليك، وتودد إلي فلا أقبل منك كأنا لي. أتطول عليك فلم يمنعك ذلك من الرحمة لي والإحسان إلي، والتفضل علي بجودك وكرمك. وارحم عبد الجاهل وجد عليه بفضل إحسانك، إنك جواد كريم. الحمد لله لمالك الملك مجري الفضل مسخر الرياح فالك الإصباح ديان الدين رب العالمين. الحمد لله على حلمه بعد علمه، والحمد لله على عفوه بعد قدرته، والحمد لله على طول أناته في غضبه وهو قادر على ما يريد. الحمد لله خالق الخلق باسط الرزق فالك الإسباح ذي الجلال والإكرام والفضل والإنعام، والفضل والأنعام الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فاشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى. الحمد لله الذي ليس له منازع يعادل ولا شبيه يشاكل ولا زهير يعادد، قهر بعزته العزة وتواضع لعظمة العظماء فبلغ بقدرته ما يشاء. الحمد لله الذي يجيبني حين أنادي ويستر علي كل عورة وأنا أعصي ويعظم النعمة علي ولا أجازي، فكم من موهبة حنية قد أعطاني وعزيمة مخوفة قد قفاني وبهجة مؤنقة قد أراني أثني عليه حامدا وأشكر مسبها. الحمد لله الذي لا يحتك حجاب ولا يغلق باب ولا يرد سائل ولا يخيب آمل. الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين وينجي الصالحين ويرفع المستضعفين ويضع المستكبرين ويحلك ملوكا ويستخلف آخرين. والحمد لله قاسم الجبارين مبير الظالمين مدرك الهاربين نقال الظالمين صريخ المستصرخين مؤدي حاجات الطالبين معتمد المؤمنين. الحمد لله الذي من خشيته ترعد السماء وسكانها وترجف الأرض وعمارها وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله الذي يخلق ولم يخلق ويرزق ولا يرزق ويطعم ولا يطعم ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى وهو حي لا يموت بيده الخير وعلى كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وسفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك أفضل وأحسن وأجمل وأكمل وأزكى وأنمى وأطيب وأطهر وأسنى أكثر ما صليت وباركت وترحمت وتحننت وسلمت على أحد من عبادك وأنبيائك ورسلك وسفتك وأهل الكرامة عليك من خلقك. اللهم صل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك وحجتك على خلقك وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم. وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة الزهراء سيد النساء العالمين. وصل على سبت الرحمة وإمام الحدى الحسن والحسين سيد الشباب أهل الجنة. وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل الفرج حججك على عبادك ومنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة. اللهم وصل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمل والعدل المنتظر وحفه بملائكة المقربين وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم اجعله الداعي إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك استخلف في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله مكن له دينه الذي ارتضيته له أبدله من بعد خوفه أمنا يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا اللهم أعزه وأعزز به وانصره وانتصر به وانصره نصرا عزيزا وافتح له فتحا يسيرا واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نسيرا اللهم أظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة الكريمة تعز بها الإسلام وحلا وتذل بها النفاق وحلا وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق وحملنا وما قصرنا عنه فبلغنا اللهم ألمم به شعثنا وأشعب به صدعنا وارتق به فتقنا وقصر به كلتنا وأعزز به ذلتنا وأغن به عائلنا واقض به عن مغرمنا واجبر به فقرنا وسد به خلتنا ويسر به يسرنا وبيد به وجوهنا وفك به أسرنا وأنجح به طلبتنا وأنجز به مواعيدنا واستجب به دعوتنا وآتنا به سؤلنا وبلغنا به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا وآتنا به فوق رغبتنا يا خير المسؤولين فأوسع المعتين اشف به صدورنا وأذب به غيظ قلوبنا واحدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك إنك تهدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا إله الحق آمين اللهم إنا نشكو إليك فقد نبينا صلواتك عليه وآله وغيبة ولينا وكسرة عدونا وقلة عددنا وشدة الفتن بنا وتظاهر الزمان علينا فصل على محمد وآله وأعن على ذلك بفتح منك وتعجل وبضر تكشف ونسر تعز وسلطان حق تظهر رحمة منك تجللنها وعافية منك تلبسنا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد Ya Allah, we ask you by the right of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad alayhi wasalam, please accept from us all our amal, our fasting, our prayers. Ya Allah, you know very well our brothers and sisters in Yemen, in Iraq, in Syria, in Palestine, Afghanistan, Kashmir, Lebanon, around the world they have been oppressed. Ya Allah, please help them in all their affairs. Ya Allah, people are sick around the world, help them get the best of the cures and the quickest. Ya Allah, we ask you to please hasten in the return of Mawla, our Master, Imam Mehdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Sharif. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajum. All together, inshallah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتع فيها طويلا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم اللهم صل على محمد وآل. Inshallah, after the ziyarah, I'll be around. If somebody have any questions, किसी को सवाल हो तो पूछ सकते हैं inshallah. Yes, after ziyarah inshallah. السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا محمد بن عبد الله خاتم النبيين السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب السلام عليك فاطمة سيد النساء العالمين السلام عليك يا خلق الكبرى السلام عليك مولاي يا أبا محمد حسن بن علي السلام عليك مولاي يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت بقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد منا لزيارتكم. सब मिलकर करें السلام على الحسين وعلى علي ابن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين ولا بالفضل العباس وزينب الكبرى وأم البنين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك مولاي علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر. السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى الرضا المرتضى. السلام عليك محمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد حسن بن علي العسكري. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان، اللمان 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 من فتن الزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك مظهر الإيمان. السلام عليك أمير الكفر والطغيان، عجل الله تعالى فرجك، سهل الله تعالى مخرجك، وجعلنا من صاره وعوانه والمستشهدين بين يديه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله صل على